It's so crazy to me how FBA got derailed to something completely different. Foundational Black Americans was basically this group that started off for reparations. And I'm not saying that it's successful in actually getting reparations, considering, people still haven't had reparations. It's a work in progress, I guess. And Tariq Nasheed has had a lot of different scandals of basically taking people's money but not using it in the right way, or using it in a way that's actually, well, effective to actually build the black community that he says he cares so much about. But even with all of those critiques, and there's plenty, the FBA movement was meant for black Americans, African Americans, to solidify their lineage. When you say African American, you are saying people who had ancestors that came from the continent of Africa hundreds upon hundreds of years ago, who just so happened to become American by being sold to America, by being taken away from Africa and being sold to America. And we basically became citizens. Of course, the civil rights movement and the whole thing, right? And so, we had our family who fought to vote. And as we've been here for generations upon generations, they've decided to be foundational Black Americans, saying that we've had enough generations here in America to be foundational to the country. That does not mean that we are indigenous or native to the country. That would be Native Americans. That would mean that we would have people who are already here who just so happen to look like us. But somehow, as time went by, we've had people sit there and say that no, we are actually Native Americans. This has led to Native Americans going around sitting there getting mad at Black Americans. This has led to Africans getting mad at Black Americans because we are denying Africa, because we hate Africans. And what's so funny to me is that so many different people understand the ability to break certain things down. So many people are going around, especially African Americans, talking about how educated they are, how they travel to certain parts in Africa, how they have several different degrees, how they have dissertations they've done in racial studies and global studies about blackness, right? All of these different things, which is great, amazing. They have the certificate, they have the catalog. But what's so funny to me is they do not have the ability to break certain things down when talks about certain groups. They're not talking about the FBAs, right? In the right way. You could say FBA pretendians or certain people that are trying to derail what FBA was originally standing for. FBA was Foundational Black Americans, which was just trying to solidify more what an African American was. It was not a full-blown denial of being African, having African roots, but it was a way to emphasize what it meant to be a black person in America. The same way that you would sit there and say Black American and interchange it with African American. Some of these people are going around using the FBAs, the pretendians within the FBA community, and looking at them and pointing fingers at them and sitting there getting them confused with everybody else, right? Even when they say, no, we're not saying all Africans, we're not saying African Americans, we're not saying Black Americans. Even when they say that, they give that PSA after the fact. A lot of times I still see them using it as an excuse to say what they've already felt, to regurgitate what they've already been telling their kids, what they've already been thinking, what they've already been mumbling under their breath, what they've already been sitting there code switching with some of their other friends from other communities who, share their language. And no, it's not every single African, it's not every single person from a different group, but the FBA, funny enough, is bringing certain things to light that has always been there. I've seen several different lives of FBAs acting a fool, being very xenophobic, acting stupid. And I've seen several lives of Africans being xenophobic towards Black Americans and telling Black Americans that they're dumb. And certain African Americans under there who've been to Africa, a lot of them have African partners who are basically like, yeah, they're stupid, basically giving them a thumbs up, boosting the heads of these Africans, making them feel bad, which is not okay, because some of them have said a lot of different things that is just as harmful as some of these FBA pretendians, right? I think at the root of this, right, or I would know the root of the FBA situation is not only reparations, but a lot of it is because of the constant denial of Black Americans even having culture. Our culture has never been solidified in terms of it being authentic. It has been solidified in terms of it being something profitable, something marketable, something that is a trend, something for people to consume, something for people to take a part in. But it has never been authenticated as something to respect, something that is sacred, something that you would have to do X, Y, Z in order to come into, right? Even with various different places where you would see, like, let's say Hawaii, when they say the natives tell you, rightfully so, do not come to Hawaii. Do not come to Hawaii. Do not bother us. Leave us the fuck alone, right? Even with all that being said, the Hawaiians, if you look at, videos and if you talk to them, they still preserve their culture. They still preserve the different things that they had. They still preserve the various different rituals and the various different rites of passage and the various different things that they built in their community, right? The Pacific Islanders, various different people all around, even with their culture, being threatened, they still preserved it the best way they knew how. And that's something that Black Americans never had the ability to do, because in the formation of our culture, what at that formation was people taking, people owning, people monitoring, people looking around trying to see what they can take apart. Our culture is resistant in the fact that it is constantly having to deal with people disrespecting it, taking it, manipulating it, shipping it out. But it is a culture, and it cannot solidify itself enough, right? Because you have to deal with all of these outliers that has always been at the root of the culture itself, right? And other people outside of the country do not understand. I've seen so many people sit there and tell you, you're stupid, you're African, simply due to the FBA pretendians, right? Because of them, they say, you're stupid, you're African, and they don't realize that they are erasing a fundamental aspect of what it means to be African American. There is a fundamental aspect of what it means to be somebody who came from Africa, who also has a culture that they built within America. And that is something that a lot of people do not understand. So when you sit there and you talk to people, right, you're listening to them, and they're sitting there telling you, you're dumb, you're African, your culture is African, they don't understand that that is a form of erasure, right? I understand that I'm African, but actual Africans do not have to sit there and do a whole bunch of work to even identify themselves with Africa, right? Even if there's somebody who is a first generation, they have parents who came from Africa, but they grew up in America, and so they have American culture. If you have parents that are still connected to Africa, who have family in Africa, in a country in Africa, you are still 10 times ahead in terms of being connected to Africa, considering that it's lineage based, considering that a lot of the tribes is based off of the different types of people in your family, you know, you connected in the family tree. You are 10 times ahead than somebody who is a Black American, simply due to the fact that you actually have ties, family-wise, to people and to culture within Africa. And so to sit there and tell somebody, you know, African Americans, that they need to stop being stupid because of FBAs and using that as a way to reprimand African Americans, and to say, how dare you, even if you're somebody who acknowledges that you're from Africa, but you also acknowledge that you have a unique culture that you built here in America, how dare you deny Africa? It is not a denial, it's reality, right? The reality is that our families were born here. Our families were born in various different states within America, especially the South. They went from the South, and a lot of them went to the North, right? And we have a lot of family all over the country. And so at the end of the day, to sit there and deny that, to sit there and say, you guys are denying Africa by acknowledging what it means to be an African American, is so silly to me, because that's not the same thing. Me sitting there telling you that I am an American who just so happens to be Black is the truth of what that is. It's the truth of the history of what it means to exist here. And this leads open to so many different things being taken that was also mocked. Soul food was mocked, yet soul food is actually not ours. Either soul food is European, or because it has some things that are derived from European dishes, or soul food is actually African, because technically we are African, so Africans actually made that, so we're African. Okay. Blues music, country music, hip-hop music, that's the big one, because that's one of the most popular genres that we ever created. A lot of these other different genres that we created that's popular, that's actually African, because we technically came from Africa all those hundreds of years ago. So many different things is actually Africans, right? So any African can claim it, right? Any West African specifically can claim it, right? So any Nigerian can claim it, any other person from West Africa can claim that this is something that's actually theirs. They have a part in the creation of that. However, that is a form of erasure. That does not work the other way around. I cannot sit there and say, as a Black person in America, that because I have ancestors that came from Africa, I actually have a right to say that I own that particular tribal wear, I own that particular tradition, I own that particular thing. I have no right to sit there and do that, right? I could go to take my Black American ass to Africa, learn the tradition, and then I could sit there after being comfortably within it for like maybe a month. You know, I could say, oh yeah, this is how you do it, this is how you, and they would look at me and say, that's wrong. If any Black American were to sit there and go into any other country and to try to take anything, as a lot of Africans have said, a lot of African Americans have done that, they would be reprimanded. They would be critiqued, right? But for some reason, because of this American identity, because we are lost, because of that generalized identity that is African, everybody can come in and critique. Everybody can come in and reprimand. Everybody can come in and tell us who we are. Everybody can come in and tell us that we're lost. Everybody can come in and critique the authenticity of who we are. And nobody is understanding that that is why people are being xenophobic. That is why people are being disrespectful. That is how you got the FBA pretendians. That is how you got people sitting there mistreating you. That is how you got people sitting there saying that you should go and get caught by ICE. That's how you got that. So people going around genuinely being shocked, being gagged, is so funny to me. It's like, come on now. You're erasing. You're not embracing, you're not trying to learn, you're not trying to collaborate, you're not trying to put together, you're erasing.